The Hinterkaifeck farm was an isolated place, several hours' journey from the nearest village, surrounded by dense forests and endless fields. There was little traffic on the road passing through the property, and the only interaction with the outside world came from brief encounters with neighbors who rarely made it out there. It was a place where time seemed to stand still, a world apart, where the tranquility of nature and the silence of the countryside concealed the darkest of secrets. The Gruber family, consisting of 6 members, lived in seclusion in their house. Andreas, the patriarch, was a reserved, hard-working man, but already elderly. His wife, Victoria, was a woman deeply concerned for her children and grandchildren, while their daughter Maria lived with her husband, Josef, who also exhibited an introverted demeanor. The family seemed to live in harmony, but there was something unsettling beneath the surface, something even the family members couldn't identify. The tranquility that had characterized the early years of life on the farm began to be interrupted by strange signs. Noises from the attic, which sounded like heavy footsteps above, began to awaken an increasing sense of discomfort. The feeling of being watched intensified more and more. Daughter Maria and son-in-law Josef began hearing knocks on the walls, a kind of movement that seemed to be made by human hands, but there was no one visible to confirm it. One night, Andreas Gruber reported seeing a strange figure moving across the property, but when he attempted to investigate, he found no one. It was at that moment that the sensation of something being wrong transformed into a palpable fear. However, no one knew what was behind these signs, and the explanations were dismissed as the paranoia caused by isolation. But the reality was about to reveal itself in a much crueler way than anyone could have imagined. On the night of March 31st, 1922, tragedy struck Hinterkaifeck. The killer, or killers, entered the farm with chilling coldness, as if they already knew exactly what they were doing. That night, Andreas Gruber, the patriarch, was the first victim. He was alone in the attic when he was attacked. What makes this death even more macabre is the fact that the killer not only killed him, but also left him there, in the very spot where the tragedy occurred, without any signs of a struggle or resistance. The silence was absolute. After killing Andreas, the killer didn't hesitate. His wife Victoria was next. The violence of her death was horrific, a scene of carnage where Victoria had no chance to defend herself. But the most macabre part was yet to come. The killer didn't stop at killing the adults in the house. The 2 young children, who were sleeping in their rooms, were also violently killed. And there was also the maid Katharina, who was also brutally murdered while sleeping. The massacre seemed to be calculated, unhurried, without mistakes. The killer knew what he was doing, and there was no room for failure. The fact that all the victims were in their rooms, in different beds, unaware of what was coming, made the scene even more disturbing. After the massacre, the most unusual thing happened. The killer didn't immediately flee. Instead, he stayed in the house, living among the corpses, as if nothing had happened. He kept the fire burning in the fireplace, and even ate the food that was in the kitchen. But how did he manage to stay there for so long without being detected? How was it possible that he coexisted with the victims' bodies, without anyone noticing his presence? For several days, the farm remained in absolute silence, with nearby neighbors saying they had never seen anyone enter or leave the house. How was this possible? How could one person kill an entire family, and then continue living as if nothing had happened? When the police finally arrived at the farm, after neighbors noticed something was wrong, the investigators were shocked by what they found. The bodies were scattered throughout the house in different locations, but the most disturbing part was that the killer seemed to have lived in the house after the murders. The house was locked, but the doors weren't locked, and no one had seen anyone leave. The bodies were in a terrifying arrangement, and the idea that someone had still been there, hiding and feeding, left the investigators bewildered. But the mystery didn't end there. The scenario became even more macabre when neighbors began reporting strange events that occurred after the tragedy. In the days following the massacre, some people claimed to have seen strange figures around the farm. Some witnessed a strange man walking through the neighboring properties, but no one could identify him. He appeared at various times and seemed to disappear quickly. But who was this man? What was he doing in the area right after the murders? The police conducted several searches in the area, but never found any concrete clues leading to him. Over the years, various theories emerged about who could have been responsible for the massacre. Some suspected one of the farm's workers, a man who had been dismissed shortly before the murders, claiming he might have sought revenge on the Gruber family. But, as it turned out, this was just an unfounded speculation, as there was no sufficient evidence to confirm this theory. Others suspected Joseph, Andreas's son-in-law, but there was also no evidence linking him to the crime. The lack of any tangible clue or eyewitness left the investigations without direction. And as the years passed, the Hinterkaifeck case transformed into a horror story. For some, the idea that the killer or killers remained in the house after the murders is the greatest mystery of all. How could someone commit such a horrible crime and then live among the bodies unnoticed? There was no escaping the fact that something very sinister had occurred at the farm, something beyond human comprehension. The murder of 6 people in one night, and the subsequent presence of the killer in the house, seems like an endless nightmare. The stories of people who claimed to have seen strangers around Hinterkaifeck fueled the paranoia, and over time, the fear and legend of the place spread. The house was abandoned, the farm forgotten by most, but the mystery never disappeared. The Hinterkaifeck case remains one of the most disturbing unsolved murder stories, feeding the imagination of many even today. No matter how many theories try to explain what happened there, one thing is certain: the evil that hid there still leaves its mark, and the case remains to this day shrouded in mystery, with a dark echo resonating through time.